What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Boozer here. Thanks for stopping by. So today's video, I want to talk about the rare champions in this game that I actually still use with some regularity on my endgame accounts. So as we all know, the rare champion is what we start with. We start with our starters, but some of them last a test of time and others fall off relatively quickly. So I think in this video, I want to show you guys which rare champion is actually worth using and will actually make it into the end game for your account. So you don't really need to worry about getting value or losing value from these rare investments. At least for myself personally, I've always found ways to use these champions. So let's jump right into it. All right, guys, so let's start off with probably the best rare champion in the game. It's going to be Coldheart here. You see that I actually have 4 Coldhearts built, all level 60. They're all fully booked, not all fully mastered. So not a big necessity there, but I have 3 of them all mastered down to the T6. I have the 4th one not quite there. Coldheart is probably going to be the one that most people will use basically from the beginning of the game all the way to the end of the game for various reasons. Coldheart has a exceptional skill here called Heartseeker. It basically deals max HP damage. Max HP hits from champions are really strong up to until dungeon 21, for example. At 21 and above, the bosses only take 10% as the maximum from a max HP hit. This applies to things like Hydra. For example, Hydra can only take 10% enemy max HP damage maximum. But Coldheart hits extremely hard for a rare, obviously, one of the few enemy max HP champions. She also brings a turn meter reduction, which is really strong against bosses or enemies that can be affected by turn meter. Mainly the spider. The spider can be affected by turn meter. So if you have a Coldheart, bring her against the spider boss, and she's going to be your MVP for sure. Another boss that Coldheart is really good against is actually Dark Fae. So Dark Fae is the main boss in rotation 2 of the Doom Tower, and probably the most important gear farming boss that you guys need to optimize. So she's really strong in that area as well. She's also incredibly strong because she has a quad hit A1 with the heal reduction, perfect skill against Fire Knight, who heals off of hit and requires multiple hit A1s to take down the shield. She's a MVP there as well. She has some wave clearing ability with the A2, but it's not really super strong. Even in the early game, you can use her against clan boss. She does bring poisons here as well. Personally, for myself, I still use Coldhearts in Shogun's Grove. So endgame Shogun Grove team, I still use Coldheart there. I use her in the highest levels of the Iron Twins dungeon as well. I use her in Fire Knight hard as well. So on this account, yeah, so she definitely gets a lot of play on my account, through the entire life of my account. So number one investment in terms of a rare, she's going to be up there in that conversation. All right, so moving on to the next rare that you'll always get value from is actually Painkeeper. So Painkeeper, if you have a Painkeeper early, what I did with my Painkeeper is I basically had her in my clan boss team working the budget man-eater teams. So Painkeeper is really good because she brings obviously the decreased cooldowns here, which enables you to do some wacky things like keep up your unkillable with man-eater, for example, or tag team with Emic for some other cool combinations. But right now I use her basically just mainly for this ability, and she fits right into my Iron Twins team. She fits right into my Shogun team, for example. And like I said in the past, I've used her for clan boss situations. She's going to be really good in some, I believe, the secret room that requires the rare champions with the AoE healing. The healing is actually really good just to keep your squad alive while you're trucking through that secret room. So Painkeeper is one of those ones that you definitely should look out for and keep and build up. You always get value from her. She's obviously very good in faction wars, similar to Coldheart, who's also very good in faction wars. So both of these are exceptional rares that you guys should keep an eye on and will probably never lose value for you along the course of the game. All right, another Void rare. So a little bit of a pattern here. These are the best Void rares in the game. We have Renegade. Renegade still makes her way into some teams nowadays. Obviously, she's like a budget Kymar, where she has the reset cooldown by 2 turns, so a little bit stronger than Painkeeper, but then she deals damage to herself. And this one is on a 5-turn cooldown, and Painkeeper's is on a 4-turn cooldown. So a little bit different, but what Renegade actually brings is some utility against the Fire Knight. So she brings a triple hit decreased speed, and she brings an A1 heal reduction. Again, perfect combination against the Fire Knight. If you have Renegade, you can definitely bring her into Fire Knight to help you out there. The decreased speed is very good, triple hit's very good, and of course heal reduction is very good. In terms of how I geared her, for what I was using her in, I had her in a shield set to basically help my Seer rip off buffs, and then she would reset Seer, for example, and then Seer would be able to rip off buffs again and clear the waves. So I was using Renegade in a kind of a double reset team for Ice Golem with Kymar. But basically she doesn't need to be geared extremely well. She was basically just there to kind of go last with the shield set. As you can clearly see, she doesn't have much speed, didn't have much accuracy. She's basically just there for the shield set. I've also used her in some Shogun teams, so the reset 2-turn reset is very useful there as well. Definitely, I don't want to go into detail about Shogun teams, but she definitely can find some use there. She's very decent in faction wars, for example. Good dungeon crawler, good against Fire Knight. Overall, quite decent champion. She can even be used in some Hydra teams to take advantage of the Trunda mechanic, where she can reset Trunda, for example. So any kind of champion with this kind of ability where they can reduce cooldowns are going to be very good. You're going to be able to find some use for them. So Renegade is one of those champions that you should look out for. If you build her out, you're not going to regret it. She's just going to be solid on your account for the life of your account. All right, so our next champion, we're off the Void rares. We're on to War Maiden here. So War Maiden is a farmable campaign rare. She's one of the earliest champions that brings you the AoE decreased defense, which is on a 3-turn cooldown at 100% chance to land. Obviously one of the most important debuffs in the game, especially starting out early. The decreased defense really helps your damage dealer clear some waves. So she comes in here as a rare. She's farmable, so people always suggest to go for her. Over the years, she has been power crept quite a bit. Obviously, there's more and more champions that have AoE decreased defense. If you land on one of those champions, for example, like Deacon Armstrong. Deacon Armstrong is a promo code champion. If you get Deacon Armstrong, you don't need War Maiden anymore. But War Maiden is actually still an exceptional rare. She hits quite hard, actually, for a rare. She has increased attack here, and then she can actually place a poison or A1, which is kind of interesting. So in the very early game, you can actually use her as your decreased defense champion, and then you can use the A1 against clan boss just to stick a poison there to do some extra damage. Overall, I mean, she's not going to light up anybody with her attack or her survivability, but you still find some uses for her. She's going to help you out, help you speed up faction war clearing. She's going to help you get through some of those Doom Tower secret rooms. So her AoE decreased defense slam is still very important. And in some stages, she's going to be pretty critical because she might be the only option you have. If you have a better decreased defense champion early, I would recommend not building out the War Maiden until much later in the game. Because once you have a decreased defense champion, it's probably going to be better than War Maiden. So you probably don't need to invest in the War Maiden anymore. With that being said, I still use her to this day in some areas, mainly faction wars. But previously, in the beginning of my account, obviously I used her a lot more frequently. But right now, she's relegated to faction war duties. All right, guys. So sticking with the Barbarian faction, we have Soulbound Boer. So Soulbound Boer, similar to Coldheart, has a skill here that doesn't actually require her to be at 100% crit rate. So here she gets an extra 25% crit rate, so you can actually build her for 75% crit rate, and then also has similarly a turn meter reduction similar to Coldheart. It's not going to hit for the max HP damage like Coldheart though. She has a kind of a single target slam here where she ignores some defense on her A2, and her A1 is actually pretty good where she has a AoE A1. So the big thing with the Soulbound Boer is that you put her in a stun set and she's going to do a lot of work for you because she has the AoE A1, which can help you apply the stuns, and then she has Termia reduction on her A3, which can help you control champions, and then she does have a kind of a decent damage slam on her A2. So Soulbound Boer, you'll be probably using her mainly for faction wars to help you get through it, especially if you don't have Seal of the Drakes yet. Once you have Seal of the Drakes, she's going to be stunning everybody, no problem. But Soulbound Boer is going to be useful there. She's also going to be useful in some of the secret rooms in the Doom Tower once you get there. So even if you don't use the Soulbound Boer for a long time, having her leveled up won't be a waste on your account. You'll still use her for those secret rooms. She's definitely going to help you out there. And actually, Soulbound Boers showed up quite a bit in the city of Centranos. And obviously with the, if you have a stun set and then proper stats, you can use her to control the waves, help you get through some of those really tough Centranos stages. But yeah, Soulbound Boer is one of those rares that I built a long time ago just for a specific purpose, especially for faction wars, for example, just to get through faction wars. But now I still see myself leaning into her and getting picking her up for other rounds of duties. I've even built a second Soulbound Boer, like I said, to help with the city of Centranos, some of those stages. So I do have actually 2 Soulbound Boers on my other account, just to show how useful this champion is in the end. And as a rare, that's pretty good. So as you can clearly see, I got 4 Coldhearts here, so I got 2 Soulbound Boers on my other account. Great champion. Yeah, really long-term value from this one. All right, so this is my starter champion from my first account, Elhan. Elhan, I actually still use in my faction war. She's a rare. She actually still slams pretty good. She has double AoE slams, so A2 double hit AoE, and then A1 single target into an AoE here. She actually, she can clear campaign actually in between 9 and 12 seconds if you have her geared up properly and depending on some RNG. So I used Elhan for a long time, and she was my starter champion on this account. And she's actually obviously very decent in faction wars, help you clear the waves, do some extra damage there. She's actually also decent in some of the secret rooms where you require AoE champions. If you put her in a stun set, a damage stun set, or just gear her in damage, she can help you clear the waves for those secret rooms. And then obviously in a stun set, she has multiple AoEs happening. She can help you stun some of those waves. So obviously Elhan is a rare. She's not going to light anybody on fire with her stats. 1200 attack on an attack-based champion, or 14k HP. So the stats are not there, but if you had her as your starter champion as a 60, you can still get value from her later on in your progress, even if you don't use her anymore. So don't worry about Elhan's value dropping off. She can still definitely be useful even in the super end game. All right, no rare list is complete without mentioning the queen for many years, Frozen Banshee. When she was first released, she was a godsend for people looking to progress in Clan Boss. As a rare, she brings tons of damage from her poison sensitivity and then her A1 double big poisons here. Tons and tons of damage coming from her against bosses and clan bosses. I haven't used her in a while because I have better options now, but I still use her in some situations where I want to test some things. Most recently, I used her against in a speed run for Ice Golem. I believe 25. I was speed, maybe it was 24, but I was speed running with Frozen Banshee, and Ice Golem is weak to poisons. The normal Ice Golem dungeon. Frozen Banshee absolutely obliterates the Ice Golem in normal dungeons. The way her mechanic works, the way her skill kit works against the Ice Golem mechanic is that the Ice Golem will respond to big damage hits, but if you don't give Frozen Banshee War Master, there's no damage coming from her A1s. So she's just going to put poison sensitivity and then just unload like a machine gun with the A1 poisons into the Ice Golem. So if you're still going through the Ice Golem early dungeons, so normal stage dungeons, definitely consider Frozen Banshee. She's probably going to be in some of your boss killing teams, such as Dragon. Dragon's going to take a ton of damage from Frozen Banshee, especially the normal difficulties. Obviously, when you're first starting out against Clan Boss, she's going to do a ton of work for you there. But over the years, there's been more and more options that have been more, even epic options that are obviously better than Frozen Banshee. She doesn't really bring too much more than this. Even for something like Faction Wars, she's not particularly good. But as a boss killer, she's actually insane. And if you draw her early, she can definitely help you get through some of these harder stages, especially namely Dragon, Clan Boss, Ice Golem. Do I use her now? Not really, but I did use her a ton when I first started out. With that being said, is she worth building and using for me now? I would say no, but because of when I pulled her, she was incredibly important for the progress of my account. All right, guys, up next we have Narhorn. So Narhorn's actually obviously been around a long time. He's not a new rare or anything. He brings a AoE provoke. It's a place. It's on a 3-turn, and then he places unkillable on himself. So the way this guy works is he has some abilities to cheese some levels of content. So namely, he can do things where he can just provoke champions and then basically put unkillable on himself and then just bait the hits and then survive, and then your team can clear the content. So there's several areas where Narhorn is actually kind of a specialist. He's known for this. He's a rare, so he's super budget, and he doesn't require a lot of books or anything. Like you basically can get away with 3 books here, but in the end game there's actually still some use for this guy. Obviously, any kind of AoE provoke champion is going to be good at controlling waves, so if he shows up in Centranos, you're going to be using him there. But the main thing this guy shows up in, actually, for me, where I actually still use him, is actually Shogun. He's in my Shogun 25 team, and he basically, him and Emic alternate between the unkillables and then basically letting the Shogun hit them and then surviving the big hits. And that's how my team is able to beat the Shogun on 25. So Narhorn's very important there. This build is specific for that team, so the Shogun 25 team. That's why his crit damage is kind of through the roof. It is not particularly fast or anything. It's just, that's the only place where he is used for myself. No masteries, and then the books are not really relevant, but obviously you want these 2 booked down. So for me, without Narhorn, I don't really have a super good Shogun 25 team, but with Narhorn, I have a pretty budget team that I don't need to pluck and use other champions from other teams and re-gear them and all that stuff. So Narhorn makes that possible. So with that being said, he's super important for my account, just being part of that Shogun team. So definitely some high value here, and if you guys draw him early or pull him early, he's definitely worth considering. He's going to help you guys in Faction Wars. Like I said, anything with the AoE provoke is going to be really good. Any wave-based content is going to be very good. But is he going to be like your A-team champion, A-team list, team? Probably not. He doesn't bring enough. He doesn't bring enough, right? He doesn't bring any damage. He's not particularly strong. He doesn't really support your team other than controlling the other team somewhat, right? So with that being said, he's still very important rare for any kind of account, and you'll definitely get some value from him in the long term. All right, coming up next we have Bellower, another rare void. So this is one that I missed. Didn't mention him at the top, but Bellower actually came in and he was very useful throughout the entire progress of my account. I used this guy from the beginning. He was my campaign farmer. I switched him out of that, obviously, not with this build, but he was my campaign farmer, and with him I was able to beat Faction Wars because he has multiple AoEs. He has an A1 AoE, he has an A2 AoE, and he has an A3 AoE. All of them bringing very relevant debuffs as well. Small decrease defense, small decrease attack, good at keeping your team alive, good at boosting your team's effectiveness, and then decrease speed, which gives your team more turns. It's the small versions, so this guy, obviously a rare, but it's the small versions, but every little bit helps. His A1 has a small chance to place the block active skills, which is actually really nice as well. But the biggest thing for Bellower is that he can't really do too much damage. He only has 1,000 base attack. But If you put him in a stun set, all his AoE is going to come in real handy, especially when dealing with wave-based content. So he's not limited to faction wars. He can do it in dungeons. He can do it like, for example, like Spider, Dragon. He can do it everywhere. He can do it Doom Tower. Doom Tower, this guy is super important just to get through in the beginning, just to progress through, because you just have to pray for RNG, and then hopefully you can clear some of those waves, because they're just too tough. When I first ran into hard Doom Tower, it was just too tough based on what the gear I had, the stats I was obtaining. So having kind of like cheesy builds with like stun sets allowed me to get through quite high into hard Doom Tower. So with that being said, I don't really use him particularly much now in the super end game. However, he does show up in some Centrano stages, so I will use him in this current stun set build. I still use him in Faction Wars just to give some AoE damage, because my Ogren tribe's not particularly strong. So he still has a spot there after all these years. So with that being said, very good champion. I do have masteries on him because I was using him in other areas. Like I said, good, campaign farmer as well. And definitely you'll get a lot of value from him, especially if you pull him early and you build him out early. Okay, so finally we're down to our last rare champion, Apothecary. Apothecary is one of those champions that back in the day, incredibly useful for any early game player. He's obviously been power crept by epics and so forth, but for him, he's still a rare. He's easy to build, and he's just a straightforward champion, right? You don't need yes, he can crit, but you don't need to build him with crit. He has a big single target heal, and then he brings the turn meter boost with the increased speed. Just overall useful champion. Can be used against Fire Knight with his A1 triple hit as well. Just make him fast. Give him Drowning Slayer if you want to do some damage in Clan Boss. He's going to help your team out. He's going to heal them up, make them go faster. You can use him in Arena, especially in the beginning. Later on in the game, he's not going to be super useful. He might show up in some secret rooms where you can use rares, so he can be useful there. However, I'd argue that just AoE champions with stun sets are going to be more useful than Apothecary there. So he's not going to see too much use in the super end game, but in the beginning, if you have him early, he's going to be incredible for you, especially if your roster is kind of thin and you don't have some better supports. Okay. All right, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. That's my list of 10 rare champions that I've gotten value from the beginning of the game all the way to the end of the game, basically. Would they be like a top 10 list of rares in the game? I don't think it's a top 10 list, just because those are the champions that I use and I've leveled up and I've used. Doesn't mean that there aren't other rare champions that are quite good and you'll get value from as well. So this list is not exhaustive or anything, but I think definitively Coldheart must be the best rare in the game, and she's been considered the best rare in this game for a long time, maybe since the beginning of the game. And I certainly agree. Like I said, I have 4 of them for various uses, and they still are relevant even in the end game right now. So anyways, if I had to pick one, Coldheart would be my rare of choice as the #1 rare in the game currently. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you guys think about my 10 choices. I didn't particularly set out to name 10 of them. I just happened to have 10 of them that I used a lot back in the day, and I still probably use most of them today. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Did I miss 1 or 2 very exceptional rares along the way? Do you guys have a special case for any rares that you guys use yourselves? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys in the next video.